Time for the meeting has arrived. This is a meeting of the House Ways and Means Committee. On last week, we had under consideration House Bill 95 that apparently had some technical problems and was laid on the table. At that time, it is the Chair's understanding, Chairman Roberts, that you and the Majority Leader have got that piece of legislation perfected. The Majority Leader is not here, but I've had that conversation with him. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
Representative Knight, I will entertain a motion to take it off the table.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to make a motion. We take House Bill 95 off the table.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Representative Roberts, you may proceed, sir.
House Bill 95, I don't know if you wasn't here the other day, I'll go back over it briefly. Last year we passed this same bill that went to the governor, and the governor decided in his wisdom that he would like to veto it, so he did. But basically when we passed the Land Forest Conservation Act, and it was then ratified by the people of the state of Georgia, our intent behind that law was that if there was a breach of the covenant, that only the breaching party would pay the back taxes and the fine. However, it was interpreted after that bill was passed and ratified by the people of the state of Georgia that not only the breaching party, but also the whole amount of land that was in the covenant would be subject to back taxes and to a fine. This bill simply takes it back to where it's only the breaching party will be subject to the back taxes and fine. And there is one exception to this bill from last year, and it's over on lines 126 and 127 of page 4. The Majority Leader and I had a come to Jesus meeting the other night after we got back to the apartment, and after a few black eyes and some bloody lips, we come up with some language there that we both agreed to. And basically it says, provided, however, that such subsequently acquired qualified property shall be less than 200 acres. And what this means is that if you go and you buy 50 acres or 100 acres that adjoins a covenant that you currently have, that you can take and enroll that land in that covenant as well for the duration of that covenant. It stops at 200 acres. The reason for that is if you have 200 acres, then you can create another covenant because the minimum acres is 200. So this would allow anybody that has under 200 acres who would not be allowed to put that land in the covenant to now put it in the existing covenant if it adjoins that property. I'd be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Jim Roberts, so is it true that on page 127 that previously was a may and now is a shall? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Majority Leader, it's my understanding that it's now perfected. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Any members of the committee have a question of the author? Not, Chair will entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Representative Flood, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for getting in a little bit late, but and maybe the author of the bill did address this, but one of the questions that I had was with regard to the amount of time that this new additional land might be available for the covenant. Had you given any thought to having a minimum amount of time so that if a person adds additional land that they would not be able to add it for 1 or 2 years, but they might be required to keep the land in the covenant for at least 5 years, since the covenant is for 15 years?
It would be the land that was added would be for the duration of that current covenant. If there was right now, this covenant is for 15 years.
Right.
So right now, if you add it, you'd be adding it for 13 years, and you couldn't only add it for 1 or 2 years. It would be for the duration of that covenant.
Right, but if you added it in year 14, then you'd only be adding it
That's
for
correct.
For 1 year.
That's correct.
Would it make more sense to have a minimum amount of years that the property could be added, such that it couldn't be added for less than 5 years? Would there be any objection to that?
I would object to that.
Could you explain why?
Well, it's just under the current, I mean, the land right now cannot be, if it's not 200 acres, you can't enter it into a covenant. So you would, if you wanted to enter this in, and the whole reason behind it is to preserve forest land.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go on and enter it into the remaining years of the covenant, and that's where I'd like to see the law go and move forward, instead of just saying, well, okay, we're not going to allow you to add it in because you only have 3 years left on that covenant or 4 years left on that covenant. So therefore, you can't take advantage of it.
Well, at the end of the 4th year, you could then add the entire tract of land, including the newly acquired land.
Yeah, at the end of the covenant, you could add it all, correct?
That's right. So what would be the objection?
In my opinion, I think we need to keep it the way it is, so that the land could go on and be offered into it with 4 years left in the covenant or 3 years left.
But right now, it could be as little as 1 year.
It could be.
So you'd be open to 4 years?
Nah.
Okay.
You want my honest opinion, don't you?
Aren't they all honest?
Yeah.
Representative Sims.
I'm gonna try to help you on this in a little bit. If
All
you're
right.
a farm, if you have a farm and you have, just say 200 acres in a field, and you decide you want to quit farming, you want to put that in trees, that farmland then is taxed at 40% of the tax rate at that point in time. With this covenant, we only taxed at 20%. And by putting that in, even in that last year, maybe you decide you're retiring from farming or whatever. That's the reason that you may want to put that piece of land in. I'm just saying, I just used the fact 200 acres. But if you wanted to take that farmland out of production and put it in forest land, that's one of the reasons that you want to do that. And it gives that opportunity at that point in time to make that contiguous at that point in time.
Vice Chairman Knight.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion.
What's your motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we do pass House Bill 95.
Motion made and second to pass House Bill
As by substitute, Mr. Chairman.
95 by committee sub. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. It passes. Thank you, Chairman Roberts. All right, we'll have first reading and assignments of bills. First bill is House Bill 334. Is Representative Stevens in the bill?
House Bill 334 by Representative Stevens to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code relating to exemption from sales and use tax to extend for a limited period of time an exemption with respect to certain sales of eligible food and beverages to a qualified food bank.
Chair does not detect Representative Stevens' presence in the room, and he has more than one bill on his, so
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to this for him if you want me to.
Okay.
Basically, all this does is just extend the exemption for food and food ingredients to a food bank for the sunset period that's listed. Here he is.
Mr. Chairman, we'll just add this to the omnibus sales tax exemption
So
bill.
this is the omnibus I think the other one.
Representative Stevens has an individual and omnibus and semi-omnibus and 334. Representative Stevens.
Mr. Chairman, 334 is the repeal, actually the extension of the sunset provision that goes along with the sales and use tax with food services for the food banks.
Any questions of the author? Seeing none, it goes to sales tax. Chairman Ben Harvin. House Bill 346, Vice Chairman Knight.
House Bill 346 by Representative Knight to amend Code Section 4871 of the Official Code relating to definitions regarding income taxes so as to change the definition of taxable non-resident for income tax purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, well, let me start. Last year, we passed a bill regarding taxation of non-residents on deferred compensation plans. And once we passed it, we realized there were some compliance issues that had not been thought about in the bill. What this bill seeks to do is go back and clarify that for our businesses, and when this law will become effective, and how they will keep up with and monitor those folks who will be responsible for non-resident deferred compensation taxes.
Questions of the author? None. Seeing none, it goes to income tax. Chairman Allen Peake.
Mr. Chairman, the next three are by Representative Martin. He's not here.
That's what we just
Okay.
talking about. I don't think we have a designee, so we will, actually, next four.
You want to go to?
Is there a designee? Okay, we'll skip down to House Bill 359, Representative Stevens.
House Bill 359 by Representative Stevens to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code relating to exemptions from sales and use tax as provide an exemption from the state sales and use tax only with respect to certain sales to qualified job training organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 359 is another sunset provision drawn very tightly for the Goodwill Industries to exempt sales tax on the products that they resell, essentially keeping out of landfills and creating jobs.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, sales tax. Chairman Ben Harvin. House Bill 362, Representative Stevens.
House Bill 362 by Representative Stevens and Mills to amend Code Section 4885 of the Official Code relating to sales and use tax, reporting of sales, and deductibility of bad debts, so as to change provisions relating to deduction of bad debts by persons reporting on an accrual basis.
Representative Stevens.
This one was brought to us by the Retail Association, and it's one that essentially brings their members in line with what's already being done in other organizations with refunds and the deductibility on their charge cards.
Questions of the author? Sales tax, Chairman O'Neill. Majority Leader O'Neill.
Thank you. Do you have has there been a fiscal note ordered on that last bill about the refunds on charge card? There has. Thanks.
Vice Chairman Knight.
Mr. Chairman, when we were talking about this, you said that bring them in line with other similar organizations, our retailers. Don't our retailers already have an ability to ask for a refund or deduct bad debt?
It's my understanding that some charge cards do, but their in-house charge cards, for example, one that might be a belt charge cards, don't have that ability.
Okay.
As the major charge cards do.
Yeah. Maybe I can speak with the author at a later time.
Did I sign this? I did. Sales tax, Chairman Ben Harvin. House Bill 366, Representative Parsons.
House Bill 366 by Representative Parsons and others to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code relating to exemptions from sales and use taxes provided for a partial exemption with respect to the sale or use of natural or artificial gas used directly or indirectly in the manufacture or processing in the manufacturer plant located in this state.
Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. This would establish a sales tax exemption for natural or artificial gas used for manufacturing. It would be a sales tax exemption on gas only that would kick in at the threshold of $4.50 per decatherm. And this would go into effect on July the 1st, 2000, and sunset on December the 31st, 2013.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, sales tax, Chairman Ben Harvin. House Bill 369, Representative Austin.
House Bill 369 by Representative Alston to amend Titles 20 and 48 of the Official Code relating respect to education, revenue, and taxation so as to revise provisions relating to student scholarship organizations.
Representative Alston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 years ago, a bill was passed and signed into law regarding student scholarship organizations. Since that time, there's been some ambiguities that have kind of surfaced that need to be addressed. Last year, that was attempted with House Bill 100 that was passed out of this committee and eventually out of the House and the Senate was vetoed by the governor. This bill basically is a reshot at that cleanup language.
Question of the author. Goes to income tax. Chairman Allen Peake. House Bill 377. The author, Kip Smith, asked us to hold it over to the next meeting. House Bill 379. Chairman Stevens.
House Bill 379 by Representative Stevens to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code relating to exemption from sales and use tax so as to provide for an exemption from state sales and use tax only for a limited period of time regarding the sales or use of tangible personal property for certain nonprofit health centers.
Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 379 is an extension of the sunsetted provision for the federally qualified health centers, our safety net in the state. Essentially, Mr. Chairman, as you know, these are centers that do the health care work for at no cost to the state and is totally funded by the feds. And this just exempts the sales tax for those centers.
Questions of the author. Seeing none, sales tax, Chairman Ben Harvin. House Bill 381.
House Bill 381 by Representative Lindsay to amend Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to revenue and taxation so as to provide for an additional moratorium period during which valuation increases of property shall be limited, to provide for legislative findings and provide for the authority for this act.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee will recall that in 2009 we passed a moratorium on property tax increases in the state of Georgia due to the economic conditions existing in our state. That moratorium is now scheduled to end at the end of this year. Only thing this bill will do for your consideration is to extend that moratorium for an additional year as we continue to take a look at our economy trying to recover.
Questions of the author. Seeing none, it goes to ad valorem subcommittee, Chairman Roger Stevens. Williams. I'm sorry. Guess I used to call him Stevens. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 382, Representative Lindsay.
House Bill 382 by a new combination over there, Representative Lindsay and Abrams, to amend the Code Section 481351 of the Official Code relating to county and municipal levies on public accommodations, charges for promotion of tourism, conventions and trade shows, and other purposes.
Representative Lindsay.
Minority Leader Abrams and I stand together in support of our city. Basically what this bill does is it catches a glitch in what we did a couple of years ago, in which we gave local governments the authority to increase the hotel-motel tax to 8%. Most of the surrounding areas around Atlanta already are up to 8%. Atlanta is still at 7% because it comes underneath the World Congress Center authority. What we're seeking to do here is to raise our authority to go up to 8%, provided that that additional percentage point goes specifically to assist the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau to promote Atlanta tourism and conventions to come to the city of Atlanta. And that's what all the money will be dedicated to do so. The bill has the support of the Atlanta Hotel Council, Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Georgia World Congress Center, as well as the mayor of Atlanta.
Questions of the author. Seeing none, public finance, Chairman Ron Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 383, Representative Sims.
Mr. Chairman, I'll read this as Chairman's bill. Amend Part 2, Article 1, Chapter 8, Title 48, Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the imposition rate, collection, and assessment for sales and use tax so as to change the manner, method of imposing and collecting such taxes on certain manufactured single-family structures.
Representative Sims.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, basically the manufactured housing industry has been going through some pretty hard economic times at this point in time, and this bill basically changes the structure, the way they tax those dwellings. At the present time, all manufactured housing are taxed as a sales tax as one unit at the point of sale. This would allow the taxation of the materials to build that dwelling at 60% of the going rate, and then they would not be taxed when you sell with a sales price. It'd be basically like a new home. The taxes on a new home, if it's what we call a stick built home, would not be taxed as a sales tax. Right? You're only taxed on the materials, and that's what this bill does of it.
Questions of the author? Representative Houston.
Did you say you'd tax the materials that are built in the
actual materials? They're not taxed on that at this point in time.
What did you say about 60%?
It's only 60% of the going rate. I think it's 60% of the manufacturer's invoice amount. In other words, whatever that invoice amount would be 60% of that.
Any further questions? Sales Tax Subcommittee, Chairman Ben Harbin. House Bill 384, Representative Collins.
I'm sorry. House Bill 384 by Representative Collins to amend Code Section 3662.51 of the official code relating to provisions for joint authorities as development authorities for local governments, so as to modify the amount of job tax credit that may be received.
Representative Collins.
In conjunction with the governor's office and also economic development, we're bringing this piece of legislation basically to update and make Georgia more viable and competitive when it comes to our creating a standard-based job tax credit for job creation, changing the current threshold for the quality job tax credit, and a sliding scale investment credits for direct investment. Basically, we're doing away with the tier system. We're implementing a system that makes it us more competitive in this surrounding areas.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, it goes to Public Finance, Chairman Ron Stevens. House Bill 389, Vice Chairman Knight.
Here we go. Get you. House Bill 389 by Representative Knight of the 126 to amend Code Section 48.235 of the official code relating to taxpayer refunds so as to change certain provisions regarding interest and to repeal conflicting laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a current situation where, quite frankly, the Department of Revenue is probably one of the best investments that some folks can make in Georgia, and it stems from the fact that they're sometimes making errors, sometimes intentionally, unintentionally, but they're waiting a long time to apply for the refunds here. And currently, under the Georgia Code, we're paying 1% per month interest rate on this, and I'm simply trying to make sure we can put in a bill that can protect Georgia here and make sure that folks have a incentive to make that application for refund in a timely manner, such that we can stop the department from being a great investment for some folks out there.
Questions of the author? Hearing none, Sales Tax Subcommittee, Chairman Ben Harbin. House Bill 392, Chairman Stevens.
House Bill 392 by Representative Stevens to amend Article 2, Chapter 7, Title 48 of the official code relating to imposition rate computation of income taxes, so as to revise and change the income tax credit with respect to film, video, digital productions, and to provide an effective date.
Chairman Stevens.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is, it might look familiar to you, this is a duplication of House Bill 1100 we passed, I want to say unanimously, back in 2008. This bill gives a 30% tax credit on film. As you might know, the Tax Council is recommending to sunset this $1 billion a year industry, and this is a placeholder to make sure that it does it.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, income tax, Chairman Allen Peake. House Bill 403, Representative Stevens.
Lastly, of the package of the Stevens tax reform, Mr. Chairman, is this particular bill is a placeholder for income tax credit on qualified investments, decreasing the amount of employees required to get it from 20 to 50, and increasing the gross revenue of the that's required from $500,000 to $1 million. And, Mr. Chairman, this one shall be a placeholder.
Questions of the author about this placeholder? Seeing none. I'm sorry, excuse me, Chairman Parson had a question.
I pass, thank you.
Okay. 4-4.
Any other questions? Income tax, Chairman Allen Peake. What's that? Which one was it? Was that the thing? No.
Chairman Martin or Ms. Hughley are here.
I'm sorry, what?
Or Teasley. Is Mr. Teasley here? Yeah. Okay, I got him. Okay. Mr. Teasley's here, Mr. Chairman. 407.
Representative Teasley.
House Bill 407 by Representative Teasley and others to amend Code Section 48.524 of the Official Code relating to payment of taxes to county in which returns are made and penalty on delinquent tax payments in each county of this state having a population of not less than 590,000 or more than 660,000. So it's that population bracket, so it will remain applicable to counties under the 2010 census.
Excuse me. Representative Teasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was some language that was brought to me by the local Cobb County Tax Commissioner to allow them to stay in compliance based on the population brackets that are set forth in the Georgia Code, so that they could stay in compliance on collecting property taxes.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Vice Chairman Knight has a question.
Yes, Representative Teasley, I'm in a similar situation as you with another bill on this, but we don't have the final census numbers, so we're just taking a stab here at these census numbers?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And they're aware of that.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions of the author? If not, it goes to the Ad Valorem Subcommittee Chairman Roger Williams.
Okay.
House Resolution 419, Representative Harbin.
House Resolution 419 by Representative Harbin and others proposing an amendment of the Constitution is provide that the amount equal to state sales and use tax collected on sales of motor fuels for the purpose of propelling motor vehicles on public roads of this state and otherwise exempted by general law shall be appropriated for all activities incident to providing and maintaining an adequate system of regional public use airports in this state.
Chairman Harbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 419 really is just simply we're taking the fourth penny that goes to the general fund, 25% of that beginning July 1st, 2013, and redirecting that to use for airports. And then it will increase.
You mind starting over, Mr. Chairman?
All right. Now you can hear me, I hope. House Resolution 419 is a constitutional amendment to take the fourth penny that now goes to the general fund of the motor fuel tax and just allow 25% of that beginning in July 1st, 2013 to be used for airports. It increases by 5% until it reaches a maximum of 45% of that penny. This is the penny that goes to the general fund and not to Department of Transportation today. Just allowing it for airport use for economic development.
Questions of the author? Seeing none, goes to sales tax. Chairman Ben Harbin. A couple of three announcements. There will be a sales tax subcommittee meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, at 1 o'clock in room 133 of the Capitol. There will be an income tax subcommittee meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, at 2 o'clock in room 133 of the Capitol. There will be a public finance and policy subcommittee meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, at 3 o'clock in 133 of the Capitol. And remind the members of the committee about the committee dinner tonight. I'm sorry. going to do it, it'd be a good thing to go and announce. Which one did you say? Which what?
Public finance and income, which would be the 2 and 3 o'clock.
I'll be there.
When is that? Chairman Stevens, I hate to interrupt you, but your meeting was, what time? Was at 3 o'clock. Can you change that? Would 2 work for you? Okay, so public finance will now be at 2 o'clock. And now which one is that? Sales tax? Income tax at 3:30. Yeah. Any further business to come before this committee? Not, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.